everybody. Today we're going to discuss moving up to the next category in aerobatics, aerobatic competition. So, I've used this technique going from primary to sportsman, sportsman to intermediate, and now I'm going to have you guys watch me as I go from intermediate to advanced. Now, everyone has different techniques that might work for them, but I'm just going to share with you the technique that I use. So, first, I normally start by flying a few people's free. Reason being is the frees generally are easier than the knowns, and definitely easier than the unknowns to fly. This gets my feet wet into kind of an easier transition over. Now, sometimes this doesn't really work out in the sportsman when you're going from primary to sportsman, because oftentimes you'll see that those in sportsman are trying to make their free more difficult than the known because they're planning to move up to intermediate, and occasionally you see that intermediate as well. So try to pick some of the easier frees where you look at and you go, okay, that doesn't look so bad. I collect them from friends and at competitions as well. I always collect their B or C forms, and I take with them and fly them. I also like to use those to practice on knowns as well. So I have flown a few of my friends' advanced category frees, and I can tell they're going for more the points opposed to the difficulty portion of it. So they weren't so bad to fly. That doesn't mean it wasn't quite a difference. Definitely a lot more energy management in the advanced category, I will say that. But now I'm going to start getting ready for the known sequence. And how do I do that? Well, first I look at the sequence itself, and I will fly and practice either 1 to 3 figures in a row at a time and keep doing that over and over again until I think it's right. I normally go up at altitude and do that by myself first, and then I'll go and get coaching. Now, at times I have done the coaching first. It just depends on availability, time, all that good stuff. But ideal situation, I'll go up at altitude and practice this stuff on my own. And once I think I got it, then I'll start having somebody watch me from the ground. Okay. So why do I say 1 to 3 figures? Well, it depends on how you feel, but also depends on the row. There are some sequence of figures that just do well and need the figure or two before it. For example, if you're doing a vertical up and you're capping off and going into a spin. Well, you need to get slow anyway, so generally doing both those 2 figures together are good. And maybe the next one's just a quick roll. So you just know boom, boom, boom. And so that's kind of where you sort of go through it. And then once you go, okay, I didn't do so good at this portion, you can break down and spend the rest of your flight finiting that portion of it. And if gas allows and your energy allows, you can go ahead and go to the next set of figures. After however many flights it takes to get that down, I then start flying the whole sequence together. I might group half and half or portions of it, and then eventually all of it will flow together. And once I'm at the point of flying the sequence, I'm generally having somebody else watch me at that point. If I can't get anyone, then I go up and practice it myself. All right, now what if once you're done with the known, what do you do from there? Well, there it kind of goes the pattern, how you feel, what you want to do. But generally from there, I will design a free. And then from that free, normally I take it from somebody else. Maybe I do some modifications if necessary, but for the most part, it's someone else's free. Ideally, somebody that you fly with regularly, because they're going to be able to coach you on the tips and trades of that freestyle. So, fly the free. Oh, another hint too is a lot of people, what they'll do is, if there's a group of you that like to train together, all of you have the same free sequence. It's okay. You can have 3, 5, however many people showing up the same competition with the same free. That's acceptable, because the benefit to that is it allows you guys to coach each other in it and kind of feed off of each other. And then if you want down the road, you can kind of branch out and make your own so you can stand out a little bit more to the judges. Once I start flying my free, I do the same kind of sequence, 1 to 3 figures, and then I start paging them all together just like I did with my known. And then for unknown practice. How to tell what figures are on the unknown sequence or could be on the unknown sequence. So you go on to the IAC International Aerobatics Club Contest Rulebook. 2020 is the latest version. And if you go all the way to the last chapter, 37, it's going to go allowable figures for unknown sequence. Under here, you're going to see a number of charts for each subfamily figure. In the bottom right corner of each box, you're going to have these different letters, and that stands for I is intermediate, A is advanced, U is unlimited. Make sense? I think it does. Occasionally, you'll see a number that indicates an additional note. So in this case, you have I or intermediate, and then note 1. Down below, it tells you must incorporate a 9.11.1, a spin. So if you see this drawn at all on an Aerobatics, there will be a spin of some sort on that figure. So I go through all those different figures on the rule book that could be seen in my unknown, and whatever I can't do, I print them out, draw them out, put them on the airplane, and I go fly them and fly them well, and I have somebody watch me. After that, and I feel like, okay, at least I know I can fly each of these figures, then I'll start polling unknowns. You can go onto the IAC.org website.
Okay, 2:30 and I are ready to go. All the airplanes are pushed out. Got gas, we got oil, pre-flight complete, and cloud 6,000 calm winds, so it's a good time to fly. I do want to add the disclaimer. This is the first time I've done just about all these combinations of figures before. I've done some of the just base figures, maybe with a little bit added on, but this is going to be interesting. So I just want to put out the disclaimer, and I really like this because it's going to have you guys watch me progress from my first real advanced practice day. Okay, I've done a little bit for fun and to check it out and see if I wanted to do it, but yeah, so enjoy. Did that pump you up? I hope it did, because now we're actually going to talk about it. Debrief time. Let's see what I messed up. All right, first I'm going to talk about each of these figures. If this is your first time seeing a Aerobatics figure, this is what they look like. So figure 1 is going to be a 5/8 loop up to a 4 on the 45 down, and what that means, it's a hesitation roll. It's 2 points of a 4-point roll. So you're going to roll a quarter, pause, roll another quarter, pause, and you'll end on the upright 45 down with a half snap, that's that triangle, immediately followed by a 1.5 roll. Now this red dotted line means you're inverted.
So you're going to push up into the hammerhead. On the way down from the hammer, there's a 3/4 snap, and that's indicated because you have the equilateral triangle. Equilateral is you have equal side lines on each side, and then I know it's 3/4 because it has a little indication next to it that says 3/4. Now you might be wondering, why is there a dotted line on the up line on the hammerhead? Well, that dotted line represents how you got to that line. So vertical is vertical. There isn't really a difference between positive and negative unless you're messing up. But so you push to get to that line. So the line above your horizontal line, if that makes sense. So where it goes 2 and then there's dot dot dot. Above that's all red dotted line because that's representing what's on the up line of your hammer or any vertical. And then below that's a solid line. Well, that's representing what on your down line. That's how I knew the 3/4 snap was on the down. And the reason why it's solid is really from a hammerhead, you're going to see a solid line afterwards. But let's say you had a pushing figure where it's like a push Humpty, then it would stay negative or red dotted lines on the way down as well.
Picking figure 1 here, this is kind of my middle attempt here. All right, so I'm starting with the 5/8 loop up. Right off, left wing was dropped. And how I'm going to fix that is next time I'm going to look out at my wingtips all the way through as I pull to the horizon, and that way I can ensure that my wings stay level. So we start looking at the road. I should be pointing right at that road, but I'm not. And now I'm fixing that. So I was off heading to the right. Right now in this first roll, you can see if you look right off the tip of my nose, I ended up pushing a little bit too much and have my nose ending in a second area on the first roll. Right now I'm going up into another loop, the top portion of the loop. That portion looked fine. However, I can tell that this loop is taking too long, so I'm losing energy management. Right at 120 miles an hour, I was doing the half snap, which I ended up being way off heading and stopped too soon. Now I fixed the heading problem in the roll.
2 ways to fix your heading issue on the half snap. You know that you're going to end off heading with a proper half snap unless you do something about it. When I'm pulling in that 5/8 loop up, I could actually move the airplane's heading off a little bit, in this case to the left, and that will compensate for some of the heading off that I'm going to have through that half snap. Then there's the other method, which you should be doing, is flying it, using elevator through your snap to ensure that your heading ends up in the proper position. So you're using elevator coming up on the knife edge past the 45 knife edge realm to bring the nose where you want it, heading wise, at the end of the maneuver.
But with it, I also had a lot of heading change. Now here, I'm a little off. I did have some strong winds, but that was way too much wind correction for that. Now that half roll back up, I was off heading and allowed the nose to drop a little too. By the way, I have all these in slow motion as well. All right, another figure 1 here. Much better on the pull up, keeping the wings level throughout that. And you can see my rate of pitch is very equal, and that's something that you want to create that perfect circle. On heading, that's a good testament of the pull. Stopped, checking my pitch there, still a little too much push, and second point looked good. Now I'm building up speed and going to pull up to the top portion of the loop. Gained a good amount of speed, so I was able to make a nice big portion of this loop. Got a little bit further, half snap, over rotated a little bit. I was off to the right on the heading, and I corrected that within this 1.5 roll, which is something I need to fix. I don't have to make a correction later on. 1.5 roll was good. I ended up having a little bit of a different rate and roll, though. I have to watch that. All right, figure 2, going to push into the vertical up, focusing hard on keeping my wings level. However, I was already ending off heading, so my wings were not perfectly level. Common mistake here, I'm going to over push, and I'm positive, which means my canopy is pointing up towards the sky on this vertical up. That's a very common mistake when you're getting used to pushing. All right, now I'm going into the hammer, watching the nose and the wing. You saw some oscillation in pitch there. So I need to do better at making sure my nose and then my other wing cross the same point. 3/4 snap. rotation there slowed down towards the end, so that's possible. I'll have to look back and practice those some more, make sure I didn't fly the last portion, that the whole thing is a snap. All right, that concludes kind of walkthrough of each of the figures, and that shows some of the main things. But here's the key takeaways for each one.
Before the day's up, I'll go and I'll write in my notebook that my youngest brother got me. And I'll put down all the key items that I need to improve on. So what were the key items for Flight 1 in the Advanced 2020 known? Well, biggest one is energy management, and this is something that I've noticed throughout all the flying in the advanced side when I first started kind of flying some of my friends' frees, is I really need to work on my energy management. A few maneuvers I'm going to have to start at a faster airspeed, and now in the past I'd never really looked at my airspeed indicator to ensure I had a very specific speed before a maneuver. There were some exceptions for that, especially going down like a half loop down or something. I'd make sure I wasn't too fast, but now I'm finding myself changing within a figure, ensuring that I have 200 miles an hour, something along those lines, whatever I need, 180, 200, to be able to make it through the remaining portion of that figure. And I found this with figure 1 is right off after that 2-point, that hesitation roll, and I'm going to pull again for another 5/8 loop up, make sure that I'm noking at least 180, preferably 200 miles an hour to make that other portion. But my airplane's in miles per hour, it's built in 87. So when I'm talking, generally I'm talking in miles an hour, but I'll try to specify that one. So really where I was finding energy management really needing to be worked on this flight was that timing of the half snap, because the half snap in this airplane looks back at 120 miles an hour. So I'm trying to always time my half snap or any snap at 120 miles an hour. So to position that properly on the 5/8 loop, which really the only way I'm going to know that is with somebody watching me on the ground. But at least for starters, based on other, like an avalanche where I started, I'm kind of basing it on that same location for now. So trying to get that half snap and then do the 1.5 roll after that, because after you snap, you slow down. You're creating a lot of drag with that accelerated stall that goes into a kind of incipient spin along the course. That's what a snap is, and we'll have another video fully about that. But when you go into a snap, the end result is you end up slower, normally around 90 or so in this airplane, miles an hour. So then to do a 1.5 roll after that, really what I'm finding is, I just got to deal with that and fly it that way and fly a nice, beautiful, slow roll. But as you saw through, the video footage, I'm still working on it. So that's just something now I'm going to have to go up, start doing rolls in the 90 mile an hour realm so that I get good at it and do a nice, good, slow roll. Something you notice, part of that too, is as I speed back up through the roll, my roll rate increases. Well, you're not supposed to have that. The roll rate's supposed to stay the same. So I'm full deflection. So as I speed up, if I keep full deflection, more flows around the flight control, the rotation of the roll is going to increase. So I need to compensate for that. For as my aircraft builds speed back up, I need to relax off of that full stop position so that I maintain the same roll rate throughout that 1.5 roll. So I kind of group that all under the energy management side of things because I'm doing all this slower and all these maneuvers are slower. So I have to think about how do I have to modify those maneuvers for that. The half snap is what it is. Other thing, overall, all headings is something I need to work on. So while we're on figure 1, let's talk about heading on the rolls. So I need to work on my heading on the snap, and I need to work on my heading on the 1.5. The 1.5 is when I've been fixing the snap. So the first and foremost, I need to go out and start doing some half snaps and working on that. I did talk about how I fixed some of the heading in the pole. That's something that I've been doing plenty of 5/8 loop up. So there's no excuse there. I should have that down at this point. So, which we'll talk about kind of those techniques when I talk about the push here in a minute. But on the half snap, you gotta think when you do a true snap, you're accelerating stall, so you're pulling back rapidly, and then you're having a pitch change, and then you're bringing in yaw.
So if I'm going to the left in this case, the nose is dragging. And if you're doing a half snap, that's when it's the most noticeable. You're going to have quite a heading change. And a true snap if you do nothing. Knowing that though, and you need to be on heading by the end of it, you need to compensate for that in different ways. One way is you can pull in the opposite direction that your nose is going to get dragged to. So if I'm snapping to the left, then I'll want to kind of cheat to the right and bring it over. So you can cheat, up to 5-10 degrees. A judge won't see that. So in the pull, you can cheat that a little bit. Another mechanism too is you just fly it. So I've heard, fly the snap, which makes sense. You still can maneuver the airplane and push pull. So while you're doing that half snap, you can kind of still keep the nose trending in the direction that you want by using a little forward. So and it's not that I want you to say, okay, use forward when you're doing a half snap. That's not necessarily, even though in a snap you probably do some forward. But anyways, what I'm saying is look at your nose while you're doing the half snap. And wherever you want that nose pointing at the end of the day, you fly it there using your elevator, primarily. So you're still in the snap, still doing all that, but you can maneuver where your nose positioning is. Seems simple. I just got that coaching not too long ago, and I was like, that's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't I fly the airplane where I want it to? I do that for everything else. So snaps happen fast, but as you keep practicing them, you'll start seeing all those different areas. I promise you that. And if you haven't yet, just keep snapping. You'll get there. The half goes quick, though, so I'm still working on it. Does he? I'm still working on it. All right, now after that, I was fixing the heading of my half snap within the 1.5 roll, which means I'm changing heading in the roll. So I'll fix the half snap so I don't have to change heading in the 1.5 roll. And in the 1.5 roll, there's still oscillation. I saw it even with the 2-point rolls. So I really need to go up and kind of go back to the basics for a flight or so and just work on those as well. Now, other heading in the push. So I kept going this. You didn't see this in the video, but I actually spent a lot of time just pushing half loop ups. And I didn't really show the video because it's not as cool if you don't have a roll or anything after. And I kept ending up with it off heading. I mean, like 20 degrees off. I'm like, what in the world? So what helped a big amount was I really kept my head. You do the same thing with an upright, like a pole. But inverted, when I was pushing the half loop up, I really focused on spending as much time as possible keeping my head forward and using my peripheral to see out towards my wingtips for as long as possible to keep them perfectly level and to keep my heading, which that you lose pretty quick, but at least to keep the wings level for as long as possible. So if you lean back, use your peripheral as you push, and just for as long as you can. If you can see any part of that wing in the horizon, you keep your head forward. The second you got absolutely nothing on that horizon, that's when you look out to your sighting device. So, push, looking forward for as long as possible. That brought me down to about 5 degrees to 10 degrees off heading. So I'm still fine-tuning it. Well, I was kind of frustrated. It took a lot of tries to get to that. I shouldn't say frustrated, because it's fun to do this. So I don't think frustrated as I was upset. I was still loving it. But, so I was like, okay, what the heck? Am I missing something? So I was like, let me get back on the ground. Let me think about rudder and things like that. Maybe I need, but what was weird was where my heading was off, wouldn't make sense. Because if you're pushing, you need right rudder. Well, I was ending off way too much to the right. So I was like, am I using too much right rudder? So I tried it without rudder. I didn't really get any consistency out of that. So really what it came down to, I started phoning some friends, and they're like, well, how much inverted flying have you done? I was like, well, I mean, here and there. I've done some for maneuvers. And they're like, just as I was feeling, I feel like I'm relearning the maneuver. And that's exactly it. You're relearning the maneuver. Go up, do a flight where just flying inverted. Fly inverted level. Do some turns. Get used to the scenery inverted. Really pay attention to flying level inverted, level turns. And then start moving to push 45 up, pull 45 down, and just kind of doing this little Humpty thing and get used to it. So really what I'm doing is I'm learning how to fly an airplane inverted. All the same steps that you did in the beginning to learn to fly upright, you want to do inverted. So you're going to spend a couple flights flying inverted. Makes actually quite the bit of sense because everywhere you look, everything you do, when you actually flip the airplane upside down, I wouldn't say that it changes. You need to do all that stuff. But I guess the physiological side of you kind of goes into tunnel vision again, and all those notes and those feels and those smells and those looks and those tiny little nuanced things you do upright just fine because you're used to it, you need to reacquire inverted. So go up, I'm going to go up, do a flight or more, probably a lot of flights throughout it. This might be something I incorporate every now and again where I just go up and just fly the airplane inverted for a bit. So that actually sounds like fun. I do like to fly upside down a lot, so good excuse for me to do that. And then after I do that, I'll tackle the pushes and see how that goes to the half loop up. All right, speaking of that, so next flight, what am I going to do? I'm going to work on my snaps, especially my half snaps and controlling heading. I'm going to do a lot of inverted flying. Those are kind of the two primary areas that I'm going to work on. And then when I'm ready to get back into this sequence, which I'm assuming another flight, maybe two at most, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap this flight. So I'm going to do figures 1 and 2 back to back again, and then I'm going to start adding on figures 3 and 4, and I'll kind of sit and I'll walk through figure 5 in case I can go right into figure 5. That's something I encourage. If you know you're going to do 1 or 2 figures, it doesn't hurt to still walk through to do the think through on the other one, because let's say you go up, you do those 2 figures, and you're like done easy. You spend all this time going up to the airport and getting your plane out if you don't review another maneuver so you're ready to do it if you happen to be good enough to go on in the next one. If not, it's fine. You saw that I planned for like 4 figures and I got through 2. So you want to get it done right? So that's the point. Right? Some people also like to brief the positives. When it's just me and flying, briefing the positives doesn't really do it for me. So I'm not going to necessarily brief positives this flight. It was also my first time doing these figures, so there wasn't a whole lot of positives other than just going up and doing them. However, when I'm instructing, and anyone instructing, I do encourage, or if you like to kind of do some positives, you come back upset, any of that kind of stuff, then start with the positives, open up the brain of your student so that they're really listening to you, because people generally shut their brains off when you immediately go, hey, you stink at this. So start with some positives and then go into here what you need to work on. Or if you come back, you're totally frustrated, maybe you should start on some positives too for yourself to not shut down more, and then you can work on what you need to work on. Okay, everybody, well, that concludes this flight. I plan to do more. I'm not going to do all of the flights, but I'm at least going to kind of come back and do intermittent portions. So when I'm done flying this whole advanced sequence, I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you, okay, this is flying the whole sequence. And we'll go through and we'll talk through each of those. And then hopefully one of these days coming up, we'll get one with some ground coaching as well. How's that? Sweet, right? Yeah. Okay, everybody. Well, I'm going to see you in a little bit. My next line of videos are also going to include different ways to own aerobatic airplanes, which include co-ownerships and clubs. So I'm going to go and do a series on that. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I will talk to y'all later.